Serial killers are not new to Kerala, India, but there was something different about the Jollyamma Joseph case. Was it because she managed to con an entire neighbourhood into believing that she was a church-going, loving and jovial mother and wife? Or that she pretended to be a professor at the prestigious National Institute of Technology Calicut for over 10 years? Maybe it was the murder of her husband and 5 members of a highly regarded family spanning 14 years. What was her motive, and why did it take so long before anyone suspected foul play? This will be explained with 2 little lies. 2 little lies at the beginning and end of Jollyamma's strange story. The first lie that triggers everything, and the last one that ends it. There is a lot to unravel here as we dive into the bizarre and deceiving narrative of Jollyamma Joseph, one of India's most cunning serial killers. Jollyamma's life began in Kerala, a small southwestern state of India. Kerala holds great natural beauty. Descending from the rocky highlands westward towards the coastal plain is a stretch of farmlands, with different crops cultivated at different elevations. A linked chain of lagoons and backwaters along the coast form India's version of Venice. The watery coastal zones of Kerala are scattered with coconut palm groves, while much of the Western Ghats and riverine areas are covered with rainforests and monsoon forests. This diverse natural environment is home to an extraordinary array of wildlife. Mammals include deer, wild cattle, elephants, leopards, tigers, and monkeys. King cobras are among the notable reptiles, while peacocks and hornbills are common birds. Agriculture is the state's main economic activity, and for the Josephs family, this was no exception. Jolly was the 5th of 6 children born to Chachin and Thressiyamma Joseph. The Josephs were a middle-class family, and like many other families in Kerala's south, they migrated to the Western Ghats to cultivate the land there. When Jolly was a young girl, her family made a comfortable living growing peppers on 2 acres of land near Kattapana town. They also operated 2 ration shops in Vasavara near Kattapana. Jolly was a quiet, softly spoken kid. Out of all her siblings, she was the only one no one fought with. She never antagonized or created trouble and was a very caring child. She was also a bright kid, and her father recognized the academic potential, so he sent her for higher studies. Jolly attended a government school and pursued a degree in humanities at the Muslim Educational Society College in Kattapana. She shared a rented room with 2 other girls during her first year, but was kicked out for stealing earrings from one of her roommates. Following this incident, Jolly vacated the room and continued her studies as a day scholar. She joined St. Joseph's College in Pala in 1992, but dropped out after 2 years. In 1997, Jolly Joseph, a pretty 25-year-old Bachelor of Commerce graduate, met Roy Thomas at the house of his relative Matthew Manchadikul. Roy, who was working in Hyderabad as a distributor of ready-made garments, was the son of Matthew's brother-in-law, Tom Thomas. Jolly lied to their family, telling them she had a Bachelor of Commerce master's degree. This was the first of 2 lies that undid everything for her. Love blossomed between the 2, and they were married in 1998, making Jolly the daughter-in-law of the highly respected family from Panamattam. The family included Tom Thomas, a former teacher who retired as an officer from the State Education Department, wife Anima Thomas, a retired teacher, elder son Roy Thomas, sister Renji Thomas, and younger son Rojo Thomas. In 1999, Jolly and Roy welcomed the birth of their first son, Romo. The Panamattam family's decisions were considered to be the final word among locals, as they were the first household in which everyone was well educated. The power of education and the stature of the teaching profession put the family members in a highly respectable position, leaving Jolly, who is also from a well-to-do family but from an agricultural background, isolated. Living with your husband's parents isn't unusual for Indian culture, and with that said, Jolly moved into the Thomases' family home. It was a spacious property with an iron fence that stood out from the tangle of lush jungle around Kudathai. A little plaque on the gate bared the name Tom Thomas, Roy Thomas's father. Tormented by an inferiority complex after becoming part of the Panamattam family, Jolly struggled to find a way to attain power and status. Meanwhile, Roy resigned from his job in Hyderabad. He had no permanent job and borrowed money from his parents for various business ventures, all of which ended in losses, leaving them financially dependent on his family. The outspoken Anima Thomas was a de facto head of the Panamatum family, especially in financial matters. She held complete sway over each rupee spent and allocated amounts for family expenses. There was no room for extravagance, which Jolly found terribly insulting. Trouble began in 2001 when Anima retired, leaving the family without an income. With little confidence in Roy securing a job, Anima put Jolly in the spotlight. With a master's degree, she should be able to secure a job easily and support the family. That's when the harmless lie returned to haunt Jolly, and new lies were concocted. Jolly decided to fake a career as a commerce teacher at the central government-run National Institute of Technology in Kozhikode and forged an identity card too. But Anima began doubting her educational qualifications, and she was too smart not to find out. To exacerbate the situation, Anima began restricting her freedom, not allowing her to leave the house. And that's when things took a sinister turn, realizing that in order for her to gain financial control and attain power, Anima must be eliminated, igniting a story that will send a shiver down your spine. On the evening of August 2002, Jolly poisoned a bowl of mutton soup with cyanide. Soon after eating it, Anima collapsed in her bedroom after taking a few sips of the soup. Froth collected at the corners of her mouth as she went from dropping to the ground to dying painfully within minutes. She was rushed to the hospital, but doctors declared her dead on arrival. She was just 57 years old. The scary part about all of this was Jolly mercilessly went about her business as Anima was crawling on the floor and writhing in her own vomit. Because Anima had health issues, her death wasn't considered suspicious, and there was no post-mortem. In India, post-mortems are only required if the death is unnatural or suspicious. The deceased person's family can request them, but some Indians are reluctant to do so because of a cultural belief that autopsies are a desecration of the body. Jolly's plan worked, and within 1 week after Anima's death, took control of the family's finances, with members of the family becoming dependent on her. But the mood changed. There was unhappiness in the house, and the feeling had grown cold under its new matriarch. Friends and family stopped coming by. Tom's mental health began to decline, and he became a recluse under Jolly's control. He stopped interacting with his next-door neighbour Bava, who he grew up with as a kid, and his relationship with his own children began to break down. Meanwhile, Roy had become an alcoholic, and still wasn't earning an income, and with the arrival of their second son in 2004, financial stress was starting to become an issue. Around this time, Jolly prevailed on Tom to sell 2 acres of his land to settle her husband's debts. Property disputes started emerging as Jolly demanded that the family home be put in her and Roy's name. These disputes angered Jolly, and with the successful elimination of Anima, there was no reason why she couldn't get away with eliminating Tom. And on August 26, 2008, Jolly claimed a second victim. A boiled tapioca dish laced with cyanide was used as a weapon. Tom became violently ill after eating it. Jolly called Bava and calmly told him that Tom wasn't well. When Bava arrived, he found Tom lying flat on his back, foaming at the mouth. Bava rushed him to the hospital, but it was too late, and the doctors declared him dead from a heart attack. In the months following Tom's death, Jolly published a will in which he had left the family property to Roy. It was another concoction produced by Jolly. The will had no witness signatures and no official stamp. As a result, many people in the village questioned the couple's motives. Following the publication of the fake bequest, they suddenly began acting as if they owned the entire property. Despite the family's isolation, Jolly worked hard to maintain a positive impression whenever she appeared in public. She attended weddings and funerals, went to church on Sundays, and attended parent-teacher meetings at the church-run school where her 2 sons studied. Socially active members of Kudathai described her as extroverted, charismatic, and good with people. Even those who did not like her respected her due to what they knew to be her professional status. She had been leaving her house every weekday morning for over a decade to teach at the prestigious National Institute of Technology. Jolly had grown increasingly frustrated at Roy's emotional and financial instability, and Roy was suspicious about her desire to be the wife of a financially settled man. It seems neither wanted each other, and with Roy gone, Jolly would inherit all of the Thomases' assets. This brings us to Jolly's third target, a carbon copy of the two other victims. On September the 30th, 2011, Jolly called Bava to the house. When Bava arrived, he was greeted with a grotesquely familiar scene. This time, it was Roy, lying on the bathroom floor, foaming from the mouth after deadly administration of cyanide in a glass of water. The untimely death of Roy was a turning point. His siblings, Renjo and Rojo, were not ready to believe the story of his untimely and unnatural death. With the help and assistance of their uncle Matthew, they insisted Roy needed a post-mortem. The post-mortem found that Roy Thomas had died after consuming cyanide. But Jolly successfully contrived a story of a depressed alcoholic Roy that had committed suicide because of debt, and she pleaded with the family not to talk about it and spoil the family reputation. Though police had a registered case, they closed the investigation based on a statement. Jolly also used her political contacts to bury the story, but one person who refused to accept her explanation and threatened to reopen the investigation was Matthew. For the next 2 years, he challenged her claims to the family property and the validity of the will. Fearing that he would be a stumbling block in Jolly's pursuit for happiness and financial security, he too was administered cyanide and murdered. On April 2014, 67-year-old Matthew collapsed and died after drinking a cup of coffee Jolly had poisoned with cyanide. Around this time, Jolly became close to high school teacher Shahzu Zacharias, the son of Tom's brother. Shahzu was the only son of a wealthy family and had 2 children, a son and a daughter, with his wife Silly, who worked as an accountant at the local church office. But he was a married man with kids, and she could never have made him her husband without removing those hurdles. So Jolly wasted no time. On May the 1st, 2014, just days after Matthew's death, Jolly travelled to Shahzu's home to attend the Holy Communion of his son. Early that morning, Jolly helped cook breakfast, and then volunteered to feed their daughter, 2-year-old Alphine. Soon after, Alphine fell violently ill and was rushed to hospital in a serious condition. Her pulse was weak and was suffering from respiratory distress. Alphine's mother explained to the doctors that she experienced breathing problems while eating food. She was immediately referred to a hospital in Kozhikode, where she died 2 days later on May the 3rd, 2016. Jolly very cunningly got intimate with Silly. 2 years after Alphine's death, on January the 11th, 2016, under the guise of helping Silly, Jolly went along with her and her 14-year-old son for an appointment with the dentist. While at the dental clinic with Silly, Jolly poisoned a glass of water and gave it to her to drink. Her son and the dentist ran over to a screaming Silly and found her lying on Jolly's lap and shaking violently. They thought she was having an epileptic fit. She was rushed to Shanti Hospital immediately at around 5 p.m. She was in an unconscious state, and with the symptoms of epileptic fits, a cardiopulmonary resuscitation was done. But Silly was declared dead by 6:25 p.m. The cause of death, according to hospital records, was epileptic cardiopulmonary arrest. After Silly's death, no one raised doubts or demanded a post-mortem because there was no suspicion. Playing the role of sympathizer, Jolly got intimate with Shahzu, who, having just lost his daughter and wife, was in desperate need of consolation and companionship. A year later, Shahzu and Jolly were married. 6 meticulous murders between 2002 and 2016. All members of the Panamatum family suffered identical, mysterious deaths. Jolly conquered, or so it seemed. This hasty marriage, alongside other suspicious activities such as Jolly inheriting all the ancestral wealth based on a will allegedly made by Tom Thomas in 2008, demanded answers. People close to Jolly also had begun to suspect something was wrong. Renji and Rojo's suspicions about Jolly deepened after her marriage to Shahzu. The property disputes between Jolly and her first husband's siblings continued. Renji filed a lawsuit in January 2017 to contest ownership of a plot of land. As part of the suit, she had access to her brother's post-mortem for the first time. And one glaring discrepancy stood out. This discrepancy exposed the second lie I mentioned earlier, and finally changed things for Jolly. Upon the request of his uncle Matthew, a post-mortem examination was conducted after Roy's death. Despite the discovery of cyanide, Jolly convinced everyone at the time that it was suicide, changing her earlier story that it was a heart attack. But such is Jolly's influence, no one doubted her, and everyone, including the suspicious uncle, agreed to keep silent for the sake of family honour. During that time, Jolly repeatedly reminded us that poor Roy had not even eaten the food she had prepared for him before he passed away. That is the little lie that would be her undoing several years later when Roy's brother Rojo went through the autopsy report again. It said there was undigested food in Roy's stomach. After finding discrepancies in Roy's death, Rojo investigated the other deaths more closely. A peculiar pattern emerged. Jolly was present at the time of each death. Jolly was always the first person to see the death and inform the others. Jolly was also responsible for taking the victims to the hospital. Rojo and Roy connected the dots and suspected foul play. All the dead bodies were exhumed and subjected to autopsy. Gathering scientific evidence from the mortal remains was nothing short of a nightmare, as the bodies were buried years ago without embalming. This meant almost nothing was left of them except bones. Besides, it was very hard to find traces of cyanide even after a few hours of death. While police were collecting evidence, they got their first breakthrough during Jolly's interrogation. Initially, she denied all charges, but with evidence mounting and the police pressing, Jolly wilted under pressure and confessed to the crimes. She was arrested on the 5th of October 2019, and her confession statement was recorded, which indicated her complicity in all 6 murders. To support the prosecution's argument that the accused committed the crime, they needed to connect it with a motive. So what was Jolly's motive? Money. Money was the motive behind the elaborately planned murders. Jolly killed Anima because she was the family's matriarch and managed its finances. She then killed Tom Thomas after securing a will transferring his property. When that will was found to be legally invalid, she arranged a will that satisfied legal requirements. She then poisoned Roy in order to have control over the family property, which included the house and the land on which it stood. She landed Sharju's property after marrying him. She first killed Sharju's daughter Alphine because she knew that child would be a burden for her after her marriage to Sharju, and this explains why she left Sharju's adolescent son unharmed. The final obstacle to her plan to marry Sharju was Silly. Jollyamma Joseph was not who she seemed, making her arrest a shock for many as she carefully cultivated the image of an ideal woman and daughter-in-law. Even as the deaths in her family mounted, no one suspected that she was a serial killer. Her professional life was a sham. She certainly wasn't the university professor she claimed to be. Every day for 14 years, she left home, telling people she was going to her job as a professor at the prestigious National Institute of Technology. Till this day, no one knows where she went during all that time. Her spiritual life is also questionable. When she was first arrested, people around her described Jolly as a religious woman who was hardworking and accomplished. However, though multiple people claim Jolly regularly went to the local Christian church, the Reverend disputed this. She is not even a member of this diocese. She came here after getting married. Jolly was not a frequent visitor here, nor did she have anything to do with the activities of the church. Within days of her arrest, Jolly filed a bail plea, but her petition was rejected, and she was sent in judicial custody till November 2nd, 2019. In February 2020, Jolly attempted suicide by slitting her wrist. She was admitted to Kozhikode Medical College, and later, her condition improved. Almost 2 years after Jolly's arrest, Sharju motioned to divorce Jolly. Sharju had always claimed that he was unaware of Jolly's alleged involvement in the 6 murders. During the investigation, Sharju was summoned for questioning more than 5 times. He was suspected of being an accomplice in his ex-wife's murder. Sharju and his father were interrogated for hours, but were let off every time. Both of them claimed they did not know about Jolly's wrongdoings. Sharju also claimed he married Jolly at the insistence of his and Silly's families. It has been 3 years since the arrest of Jolly. While the investigation is ongoing, the trial has been delayed due to the pandemic. If Jolly is charged and convicted, she could face life in prison or even death. When the case was developing, the police had compared Jolly to Dr. Death Harold Shipman, a British general practitioner who got life imprisonment for murdering 250 patients between 1975 and 1998. If you want to know more about that narrative, there is a link in the description. Carella's attention is now captivated by new crimes, other political issues, and climate change. Still, every time Jolly's face appears on TV screens, a shudder of cold runs through the spine of every Keralite. She was truly a monster. As always, thanks for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.